Welcome. Glad you're joining us tonight. If you are joining for the first time, we do these podcasts completely live, and we want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. My name is Jordan. I host these podcasts. This is Pastor Ford.
Hey, I'm not there yet, but I will be.
Switch over. There you go. He is the subject for this podcast, and
Talk a little louder.
the way we work this podcast out is we ask questions, we follow a topic, but our goal is to help you, not just to put on a show or just to take up time on a Tuesday night. Our goal here is to introduce you to Jesus and what Christianity really is, not what the religious world has made it out to be or what you might perceive it to be. We want you to know the truth, and we want you to know Jesus the way that we do. So we give you the opportunities to ask whatever you want. You can file those questions in. We have a chat box, and we encourage you to ask those questions. It doesn't matter the question, just ask, and we will field those. We want to help you tonight. So tonight our topic is, what option do you have? And really the goal of this podcast, or the real focus, is the idea of self-control. Because we live in a world that is, and we've talked about this in the last few podcasts, the idea of being kind of led by feelings, or what feels best, looks best, tastes best. And I was reading this morning in 1 John and felt even more inspired for this topic, because he mentions the idea of all the things that are in the world. He says the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. These things are of the world. And then he says, but him who does the will of the Father abides forever. And so and the world is passing away. And then he says, he who does the will of the Father will abide forever. But this idea of a choice between, for all intents and purposes, good and evil, or right or wrong. We're faced with those decisions from the time we're able to make our own decisions. When we're little kids, we don't have control over the choices we make. We literally just do what feels good or seems good or whatever. We just do what we feel like doing. But as we grow and as we learn, we're supposed to learn the way to choose right and wrong. We're supposed to learn what right and wrong is. So let's first just ask right off the bat, if there's any issues with the sound, just bear with us. It's kind of hard to fix that during the podcast, but just bear with us. We hope it sounds good. We're always playing with things, trying to perfect things and make things better. But if you hear any issues, you can either if it's really bad, let us know. But if not, please just bear with us. But first question, talking about options in general, is what are, like, when I say the word options, what comes to your mind immediately? Not, that's not going to like business and equity and all that stuff, but options. You know where I'm going with it.
The first thing that comes to mind is just the idea of choices. That we have the ability to be able to make choices.
So what do you think? What do you think is like what would you say are like the main or are the main influencers for man's choices? What motivates the decisions we make?
If I have to pick one, that's hard.
No, it doesn't have to be one. That's why I said. That's why.
Yeah, I would say, for the most part, I would say that really if we're talking about people who are not aware of how their mind works, I would say it's just simply by what feels good. That would be the decision that for most people, that's where they make their choices, the difference between pleasure and pain. And so the less painful of the options is usually the one that we choose.
So there's a story, and we've gone through this story a few times in this podcast, but in the book of Genesis, right in the beginning, there's Adam and Eve, obviously the choice of the tree, but a little further down is the story of Cain and Abel. And the reason why I specifically chose that scripture is because God actually has a conversation with Cain. So Cain and his brother have brought offerings to God, and God, the Bible says, accepts Abel's offering, which was the first fruits of a flock of he brought him a lamb without blemish. Basically, he brought him the best of his flock, and then Cain brings from the fruit of the ground. He's a man who tills the ground, and so he brings these, and God accepts Abel's offering, doesn't accept Cain's, and then Cain gets vexed. He's upset, and God comes to him and he actually tells him, Cain, why has your countenance fallen? He says, if you do well, won't you be accepted? And then he says, but if you don't do well, sin lies at the door and its desire is to rule over you, but you should rule over it. Now, based off of your studies and your understanding of people and how many times you've read and studied that scripture, what do you think is going, like if you were to relate, if you could try to relate Cain's mind to today's world, what would you relate that to? Like what would be going through Cain's mind? What do you think that's like what would be like a similar story or a similar way of thinking that would, because now he's standing at Jesus, or God literally says it's at the door. You're at a door right now. Yeah. So there's this choice. You have a choice in front of you, and he chooses one that literally ruins the rest of his life.
Yeah, I think that's the real issue, which to me is, as a pastor working with people is a real mystery to me, because people do that regularly. They make decisions, consciously make decisions that they know are going to destroy their lives. And, it's not that they don't, they can't possibly think that the decision is not going to destroy their life. Like the decision to kill Abel. You can't tell me that he didn't know that there would be some sort of repercussions for this. He knows God exists. There's no question in his mind that God exists, because he's just had a conversation with him. And so very clearly he knows that God sees everything and God knows everything. But he killed his brother anyway. And it's a self-destructive decision. And that really is the mystery to me. Is why somebody would do that, because you would think, because I could give a reason why, but it doesn't make any sense to make that choice based on that reason. And the reason would be is you just have totally decided, you know what, I don't care. I just don't care. I'm just going to do this. It doesn't matter. I don't care what the consequences are. I'm willing to pay it. I'm just going to do this. It just doesn't, because it's a selfish decision. He's going to kill his brother. He's obviously not thinking about his brother at all. His brother's whatever's going to happen to his brother is just not even on his radar at all. And he doesn't care about his parents, and he doesn't care about God. He literally doesn't care about anybody. You could throw in there that he doesn't care about himself. And that might, just thinking about it, that might be a good indicator as to why people do make self-destructive decisions, is because they don't care what they do to themselves. And so that actually, just thinking about it right now, obviously that's, to me anyway, that seems to be the only real, the real, way he was thinking, is he had to have said, I don't care about anybody, anything at all. Just decided not to care, and then let that be what dictated the decisions that he made. But based on being, just kind of, childish, of just, because to not care, you're basically, you're tossing all responsibility out the window, which is the difference between a child and an adult. Is a child is irresponsible. That child could be 40 years old, but they're still irresponsible. Then they're still a child. It doesn't, because it is an age thing. It's a responsibility thing. And so, yeah, I would have to say that's, in my mind, that must be what was going on in his mind, is I just don't care. I don't care what happens.
So you mentioned the idea of a mystery, and I really do want to try and work through that for a minute. But what leads you there? Because it seems almost like a bit of a leap from bringing an offering to God to going and killing your brother. I mean, he's at first it seems he's doing something righteous. In a sense, I'm trying to find what to call that.
Yeah, or he could just be doing something out of necessity.
Because he's supposed to do it.
He has no choice.
Yeah.
He's got to bring an offering. He knows he's got to bring an offering. He can't just not bring an offering.
Do you think this is who he really was the whole time?
I can,
I realize a lot of this is
logically, it's the only way that I can really make sense of the issue. Because to try to say that he was righteous and then made this decision, that's because it's not the kind of a decision that somebody who's righteous and struggling even would do. It's so far down the road to just simply say, I don't care. He's obviously been walking down the wrong road, and that this was just kind of a step in that road. That to me makes more sense than to think that he was somehow living right and then just out of one decision. Because and I am basing that on my experience. So having pastored for over I don't even know how many years now, 20 something years. It isn't surprising to me, the decisions that people make. I'm not surprised, because it usually comes out of something that was going on already, it's never out of the blue. It's never, and it may be that I didn't know about it and it surprised me, but then when you do the forensics afterwards and you begin to, the truth starts to come out, the behind the scenes things that other people knew that knew those people, okay, that makes more sense. And so it's never this thing of somebody just walking along, being righteous, living clean, doing what they're supposed to be doing, making good choices, and then all of a sudden, boom, that one choice was the choice, and that choice ruined their lives, but they made that choice on the spur of the moment. I'm not experienced it myself personally. I haven't encountered anyone who had that is what happened to them. There's always the little indiscretions, compromises long before, and when I say long before, I mean, it could be months down the road, but there is a pattern of behavior before you get to killing somebody. There has to be, more going on. You can't just go from there. That's A to Z. You just don't usually do that. It's hard to fathom, that somebody would do something like that.
What do you think? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to link this idea, what we see in Cain, to human nature. Because and the truth is, we go and we have conversations with people, and the truth is that the whole purpose of this podcast is to try and get people engaged with the gospel and to bring them to a choice, and a choice very similar to what Cain did. You can choose, in a sense, life, or you can choose death, and he chose. I'm talking about just bringing people to this idea of doing well in God's eyes. God's the one saying this stuff, right?
Yeah. And
so how do you relate that to human nature? What are you pointing? In other words, how do you locate a Cain and how do you locate an Abel?
I would say we're all Cains in potential. It's funny. I was thinking about this the other night. It may be a little, well, I won't make it TMI. I'll cloak it a little bit. But just thinking about the number of times that I have had thoughts, destructive thoughts, that pass through my mind. And there is a fraction of a second where I think, what if, and then, start to see the consequences of that decision. It's like, why even go there? Well, why even have that moment of consideration of something? I'm sure other people have had this as well, driving along, like it's happened so many times that I'm used to it happening, but just driving along the 92, the San Mateo Bridge. And so it's kind of, it's low. And then when you're coming from the Hayward side and you're coming towards San Mateo, and then it takes this big, long, wind, and it comes up and goes around in a curve. And so you've got this big wind and then this curve. And it gets to a certain point in the curve that this thought just hits me. What would happen if you just went right off of that? You know,
I thought I was the only one that thought stuff like
yeah,
that.
see, this is what I mean. I think a lot of people do this, but the thing is you know, and there's that momentary what if, you know, and you start to think about going through the railing and off the other side and going down, and there's a moment of reality, you know, that you're actually experiencing something. It hasn't happened, but you're experiencing it, and it's destructive. You know, there's nothing good that's going to come out of it. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing positive that's going to happen. This isn't going to, you know, take your life to another level. And I was thinking about that just in so many different ways. I mean, you know, like working with chemicals, you know, and just having this urge to drink it, you know, and it's like, you know, it's going to kill you. It will kill you if you drink it, but it's that moment of what if, you know? And so that's why I say, I think we're all Cain. You know, when it comes to that, it's the same nature, you know, and we could get, you know, too technical about it, I think, and, you know, call, oh yes, it's sin nature. It's the nature we were born with, you know, and you get too technical about it. But, you know, we live this, you know, this isn't a technical thing that we're just talking about third person that happens to some people. It's something we all live, and something even after salvation that doesn't go away. You know, I know there's a story of a guy who was a pastor who, just for whatever reason, had one of those moments, obviously, and decided to take a circular saw to his neck, you know, and it's like, and it killed him, you know, but he's a pastor and he has a family and he has kids, you know, but. You know, obviously there was this what if moment, you know, what if you do this, that he gave into and actually did it, you know, and the report is that he had been suffering from depression. And so again, like I said about the road, you know, this wasn't one day, just everything's fine. And then decides to make a decision to take a skill saw to his neck. It wasn't that simple, you know? And so obviously this was something that perhaps had crossed his mind at other times in other situations, that this time just did it, you know? And I think that's what happened with Cain is, you know, what if I kill my brother? You know, what kind of repercussions is this going to have? How is this going to play out? And then just happened to be in a moment of opportunity where he could do it, and just did it. You know, and so what I'm saying is I don't think it's a long distance to get to where Cain was, and I think that's very important to understand. Is from that standpoint is that we're not talking about somebody who's psychopathic, you know, and just this is just, you know, he just happened to be alone with his brother. You know, and the psychopath did what psychopaths do. Yeah. You know, I don't think it was that kind of a thing. And then the conversation with God, and he's very rational, and, you know, I can't handle this punishment that you're going to give me. People are going to, everywhere I go, people are going to look for opportunity to kill me, and those kinds of things, you know. So this is not just somebody who's just void of all, you know, ability to think clearly. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important. So having said that, the idea of the difference between a Cain and an Abel, I think, you know, really is, you know, in some ways, just the ability to have that kind of thing, not just for evil, but for good as well. What if I do this, you know, and then doing it, you know, and because there are times, it's funny, I find myself doing that. You know, where I have an opportunity to do something, and it's a good thing, but I hesitate to do it. You know, I think, you know, well, I don't know if I want to do this, because what if it isn't good, you know? What if it turns out to be something else, you know? And I'm always like this. I was telling my son the other day, I hate, you know, spending money. It's just been something that's been a part of my life for many, many, many years, because I've had to be careful, you know, over the years financially, to be wise, so that I don't get myself in a position to where I have to work a lot and not able to pastor. And pioneering a church, there's a lot of time and effort and energy that doesn't get paid for during that time. So okay, we got to be careful of our, you know, how much our rent is, kind of car we're driving, gas, you know, those kinds of things, you know, budget bills, all those kinds of things, which I just kind of carry in my head. I'm not one to write all that stuff down. I just kind of carry in my head. We don't spend money until we have to. You know, that's kind of how I did it. You know, I didn't budget, you know, for like groceries and things like that. It was, you know, I let my wife do the grocery shopping. She's fairly conservative about grocery shopping. But you know, over the years, as that those things have changed, that still stays, and it's like, and so I have the opportunity to do certain things. And I think about people who they can spend, thousands of dollars without thinking twice about it, but for me doing, spending $1,000, $2,000 2 or 3 times in a row, I'm done. I can't do anymore. I just can't do anymore, even though it may be for a good cause and for a good reason. And so again, the whole thing I'm trying to point out is this idea is that we, when it comes to making choices, there's so many factors that are going on inside of us, that the idea of being a Cain or a Cain or an Abel really is being a Cain is when you just indulge those urges regardless of their consequences. And being an Abel is somebody who can overcome their reluctance to do things simply because they know they're good, but don't know where it's going to lead.
So there's
probably way too technical.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna kind of zoom in a little bit, so we can go through that. So how does someone learn to deal with the word no? And the reason why I say it that way is because options come up a lot, especially in the United States. Our options are endless. You can do whatever you want here. Like there's so much access to all kinds of different stuff. And although, unless we're talking about dealing with where to eat at a restaurant, something like that, not every decision is do or die. It's not every option is going to break you. But how fragile is life when it comes down to options? How fearful should a man be? And so I'm asking a lot of questions, but the bottom line is, how does one learn how to tell themselves no? And let's say that in the context of somebody that doesn't. Pulling back from what I just said, I think that is really the idea. Is no is really not just no, like There are, like with kids. I mean, that's the thing I think is interesting. I was thinking about this. I watch my grandkids a lot, and each one of them, they're all different, but you can tell the ones that have learned the value of instruction are the ones who have an easier time with no. The ones who haven't yet learned the value of instruction are the ones that have a hard time with no. And and the reason is just simply because they want to do what they're not supposed to do or what they're not allowed to do. And so I really think that that's the issue, is the idea of no really has to do with understanding the value of limitations. The value of not doing certain things. I think about going back to that whole thing about money. The reason why I was the way that I am about money is because of the benefits of being like that. I saw it, my dad, my family, we lived very conservatively in terms of what we bought and stuff like that. They never bought fancy cars and stuff like that. We had a house. My dad bought a house. We lived in that house. I think I was 2 years old when we moved into that house. I don't remember it, of course, but we moved into that house, and I was 15 years old when we moved to Tucson, Arizona, and we sold that house. So we had that house for like 12 years, and 13 years, and so the point that I'm making with that is that we had for the most part the same cars. I think I remember one new car that my dad bought for my mom in that whole period of time. My dad was building a company, and so he was able to build that company. And then we moved to Tucson, and like I've joked about before, it was like the Beverly Hills, because my dad sold his company, got a lot of money for that, and then they offered him a job as well, making a lot of money in Tucson, Arizona. So we're moving from California to Arizona, so California cost of living's much higher. Going to Tucson, much lower cost of living, but he's making more money, and he sold this business. And so now we've moved into this really, really nice house. They found this house, very nice upper middle class house that he could afford. He bought it. He didn't just buy
buy it with, and go into this huge debt over it. We were able to get it, and they paid moving expenses and all kinds of stuff to relocate, things like that. He bought a used Chevy Suburban when we got there, and so it wasn't like everything was all brand new crazy stuff. We didn't have a lot of fancy crazy new stuff. We didn't do a lot of decorating. We didn't tear the house to the ground and rebuild it. I mean, just stuff like that. So all of that, but we were able to do all this stuff. And so what I'm getting at with all that is the idea is I realize, being able to be under control and be able to tell yourself no, for things, it allows you to be able to do things, because as the time went on, he was able to buy, he really liked Mustangs, and so he was able to buy a classic convertible, I think it was like a 64 and a half Mustang, and then later on he bought I think it was a 54 T-Bird, and then he completely restored them. But he did it. He did all the work himself. He obviously had some of the work done that he couldn't do at home, powder coating and things like that. But he could do all this stuff. I mean, and he was able to do all this stuff without having to be a millionaire in order to be able to do those kinds of things, because we had learned on other things. He never bought, we didn't have fancy clothes, didn't spend a lot of money on clothes, didn't spend a lot of money on food. We as a family didn't go out to eat very much, things like that just cost a lot of money, over time, and he always taught me the idea, going into, Starbucks or something like that. It isn't how much it costs to go into Starbucks on Monday. It's how much it costs to go to Starbucks 7 days a week, 30 days a month, and you end up paying, $5,000 a year in Starbucks, if you go every day. And so, so just that kind of thing. And so the what I learned out of that is limits are not a bad thing. That's my whole point, is limits are not a bad thing. But people who are self-indulgent, they never learn that. And so they're never actually able to experience the things that they want to experience because of their self-indulgence. And so they, they can experience a few things. They have a few highs and a few lows, but usually there's always a big price tag associated with it. They're $50,000 in credit card debt, or whatever, and they just end up hitting the wall, and then, they get to be 60 years old or so, and they can't do anything anymore because they just plain don't have any more credit or any more money. And so they spend the next, 20, 30 years of their lives just, hoping to get to the end without, living on the streets. And so I think that's the, that's the issue when it comes to the idea of the word no, is just learning that limitations are not a bad thing.
So, like, we're actually, one of the reasons I'm asking this question is we were talking about this the other day with a couple of days ago with me and Clarissa, my wife. We were talking about this in the context of raising kids, and how during the period of us raising our kids, teaching them the idea of self-control and how to best do that. And so I guess this question, it applies to parenting specifically, but obviously the principle is for anybody who doesn't have self-control. But how do you teach self-control? How do you teach a kid to learn self-control and to learn the values of limitations?
Well, I think this is the hard part, especially for adults who have never learned that lesson as children. It's a very difficult thing because they don't understand. There are parents who, when their kid cries, they immediately run and pick them up. Always. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter if they've done something they shouldn't have done, something, that they've hurt themselves, they've stuck a fork in a light socket. I mean, it doesn't matter what the reason is. They always get the same response, picked up and hugged. And so what they learn is that no matter what I do, if it hurts me, I can expect to be picked up and hugged. And so now, how could they ever learn the word no? Because the word no means, no, you're not going to get picked up and hugged. That's all it means. It doesn't mean something, you're doing something that's going to hurt you or anything like that. It just means you're not going to get picked up and hugged. And usually what ends up happening in that kind of situation is it's no, and then they just do it anyway, and then some kind of consequences come, and it could be practically nothing other than just simply being pulled away from where they're at, and then they start to cry, and then they get picked up. And so that child will never learn no. They'll never learn the importance of the word no. They will grow up to believe that the world owes them everything. And that's without a doubt. There's no doubt of that. This is not something kids grow out of. You don't get to a certain age where you go, oh, I see the trouble with this. It doesn't work like that. They grow up not understanding why the world is not like their parents. They don't get it. It was a great life. They were able to do what they want. They were able to get away with everything they wanted to get away with. They were able to, to live and do what they wanted to do. Now they have a life. Now they're older. They're more able to go places and do things, and so now they need a car. Why don't I have a car? You should buy me a car because I want to do more things. And so usually these kinds of parents are, well, we've got to figure a way to get them a car, and they give them a car, and and on and on and on it goes, and so that never changes. And that's a great way to develop or to raise somebody who's going to go to hell for all eternity, because when it comes to God, they're never going to want to have anything to do with God. They're just not going to have the least bit of interest in God, because God doesn't function like that. God doesn't just give us everything that we want, like the issue of Cain and Abel. And so you have to, you absolutely have to understand that limitations are a necessary part of life. You take away the limitations, the teaching of limitations, and you take away the ability for them to ever really achieve anything.
So, okay, let's go into this idea of kind of the father figure and learning this stuff. Now, let's just say you're a person who's never learned self-control and you become a Christian. How does your lack of self-control now, or what happens to that lack of self-control? Is it like, do you just miraculously become a man of self-control or a woman of self-control, or did you do you all of a sudden gain some kind of are you the father of people who come into the church? Are you like now their surrogate father? Now you're going to take the place of the father they never had. How does that work?
You're talking about me as the pastor?
Yeah.
Well, So this is the problem, and I find it very interesting is that especially in this generation, for the most part, is a fatherless generation. Excuse me, and so they don't know. They haven't learned, limitations and things like that. They haven't learned the benefits of those kinds of things. And so they come into the kingdom of God and they want that same thing, and so they, at best, they have a hard time. At worst, they don't make it, because simply once they realize, that God is a God who puts limitations on us. But the other possibility as well is they find a church that is indulgent, that is a spoiled child, congregation of spoiled children, of people who've never learned, how to be limited. But I think what you're seeing there is a whole church full of people that are going to end up in hell for all eternity. It's like, because you can't get around this idea that you can never be God. You can never live a limitless life. You will always be under some kinds of limits. And, Jesus said, if you are my disciples, if you do what I say. If you love me, keep my commandments. And so there is always an imposing of limitations, from God on our lives. And if you can't see your way to learning that, then you're going to have trouble. Now, the good news is when you come into the kingdom of God, God doesn't just let you figure it out for yourself. I can think out of my own personal experience, because I did have all that growing up, but I didn't after I moved out, because after I moved out, obviously my parents weren't there to watch me. And so I'm doing things and experimenting with things and trying things. And the chickens are coming home to roost. I'm getting arrested. I'm getting myself into fights. I'm in near-death experiences. It's all kinds of things that are happening that are disruptive to my life. Losing jobs, all kinds of things. Losing friends, losing girlfriends. Just all kinds of consequences because of my actions and because of my inability to limit myself, to be under control. And so that is and looking back, I can't obviously use this as a template, although I believe it is. I can't say for a fact it is. But it was like, as soon as I became a Christian, it was like I was enrolled in Limit boot camp. I mean, right away. Right away.
Why?
Right
Why
away.
do you say that?
Well, the reason is because right away, things that I wanted to do, I was getting blocked. Like I'm not. So I'm smoking pot, I'm drinking, I'm partying, I'm doing all this stuff. Very irresponsible person, and so I can only work fast food jobs and entry level positions and things like that, restaurant work, things like that, things that you can come to work drunk and they won't make you go home. And so I'm living this way now. But now I'm saved. I'm living for God, and I'm clean, and I also have had a very good background in electromechanical stuff, and so now I can get a real job. And so I started applying right away for the technical position jobs and things like that, the jobs that I thought were worthy of me. I mean, that's really literally where things had gone. It's like, I'm clean now. You have to hire me. And I wouldn't not only not get hired off it, I wouldn't even get an interview. And then there were times where I had applied for positions that other people had applied for that I knew, and they got the positions. They didn't even have the skills, and I did. And it was like, man, what is up with this? And I just began to realize, what, God is doing this. There's a reason why I'm not getting these jobs. It's just too coincidental that I'm not getting these jobs. It's God's working against me. I could tell, and so I know that anything that God does, He's doing for a reason, but I'm not getting the reason because I'm great now. I'm clean. I'm skilled. I should be able to just do this, but God's trying to show me the need for limitations. And so I didn't do it with the best of attitudes, but I was like, okay, fine, fine, so I'll go back to fast food work. And so I got a job applied at McDonald's or Burger King, and what ended up happening out of that is the guy brought me in for an interview, and it was like, finally I got an interview, and his first question to me is, why should I hire you? And it's like, this is a stinking burger joint. What do you mean, why should you hire me? I think everybody's qualified to work at Burger King. I don't think there's anybody not qualified. But he asked me that question, and it really grated on me. And I'm just kind of sitting there, and in my mind, I'm thinking, why? I mean, in a sense, I don't, not the yelling at God thing, but the real genuine question, God, why are you putting me through this? What's the point of this? This has to be on purpose. He can see my resume. I've worked way better jobs than this, even in my sin. Why in the world is he not, is this an issue? And I thought, humility, that was the thought that came into my mind. Humility. You need to learn humility, And so I was like, okay, fine. If that's what it takes and that's what I need, fine, I'll learn humility. And so I humbled myself, and I just gave a full disclosure that I'd been involved in drugs and partying and had pretty much thrown a wrench into my life. And I gave my life to Jesus. And now I'm trying to get my life back together, and I need to work. And right then he said, I'm a Christian too, and you're hired. And just that was the end of the interview. There was no further anything. And he hired me right on the spot. And I thought, that was what it was, is God was just trying to show me that it is a healthy thing to have limitations on your life. And so you don't have to worry about learning that lesson or creating the environment for learning that lesson. You will be in that environment. It's just a question of whether or not you'll learn the lesson, that humility. And the truth is that humility, as I've learned over the years, humility is the opposite of it. Humility is what we think that pride is. And that really is a truth, is we think by being proud, arrogant and full of self-esteem, and, we're out there and we're the man and we got it going on and this is us, and let the world take a step back, when I come into the room, and that's how you get to be success. No, that's absolutely the opposite. It's like all of life comes against you when you do that. But when you humble yourself, it's like life just starts opening doors. and just letting you in because you can be trusted. You're not going to do something stupid, when you're humble and they see, this is a humble person. This is a person who doesn't think they're all that and more. And they can, there's an immediate trust. I mean, just so many valuable things that begin to happen, in life when you learn how to be humble.
So just apply this to, I was actually I have this in here, but I was trying to think of people who have self-control in the scriptures, and then people who people who had choices, made the right ones, had choices, made the wrong ones. And Joseph came up. Joseph is really interesting to me because, and I don't want to go into the whole story, but he's one of Jacob's sons, 12 sons in total, and one of them is it's 10 sons, right? Yeah, 10 sons, and one of them out of 10 sons is Joseph. Huh?
12.
Well, two of the 12 tribes, right?
Yeah.
2 tribes were Joseph's sons. Ephraim and Manasseh.
Okay, now we're going to get deep here. Yes, you're right. Good question. Okay.
It's 10 sons.
We'll go back on that.
Anyway, yeah. So out of all of these sons, with 10 or 12, either way, that's just really close. One is a Joseph.
Yeah.
The rest of them were crazy.
Well, not the rest of them. Not Benjamin.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, but
Well,
before,
his
so during
descendants-
Joseph's
his descendants were crazy, but he wasn't.
during Joseph's tenure in that family, they were crazy. As a matter of fact, they all got together and decided they were going to kill him, and
Right.
they decided not to kill him, and then they cast him in a pit,
Well,
and then they
Simeon-
sold him into
yeah,
slavery.
Simeon did
Okay, all
well.
right.
Yeah.
But my point is, out of all of them,
Yeah.
how did one end up a Joseph? I mean, to the point where now you work through.
I don't think that one of them ended up a Joseph. I think one of them got the opportunity to become a Joseph.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably a better way of looking at it.
What was it about Joseph that made him different in the fact? Okay, so he got the opportunity to do this stuff, but he was in moments where not only would he have, you could easily justify doing the wrong thing. Like it would have been a natural flow of life here.
Yeah.
And he decides to do something righteous even when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
And serves people when he's obviously.
Yeah. Well, now we're getting into a realm that I think is so. Again, this is another mystery to me, is that some people just love God, and some don't. Joseph has these dreams of his father and mother, and then later on his brothers bowing down and worshiping him, and he really accepts these dreams as destiny. He's looking at these as, this is my future. He's not looking at this as a dream. There's something different about this in Joseph's mind. And so when he's sold into slavery, so first his brothers round him up. They're going to kill him. They put him in a pit. And then they sell him, and he goes into slavery. And then he goes to Potiphar's house, and he's over all of Potiphar's house. And then he's accused falsely of trying to molest his wife. He's thrown into prison, forgotten, but does well in the prison. He's interpreting dreams, and then comes out of the prison to interpret Pharaoh's dream, even though the ones who he interpreted forgot. I mean, he's being kicked to the curb over and over and over again, yeah. And then he's given these opportunities as well to become something, and he does it in every one of these situations. And so he's getting kicked to the curb, getting opportunities, kicked to the curb, getting opportunities. But I think the very interesting thing is what he says to his brothers that really grabs a hold of my attention, is that he says to his brothers, he says, you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. And so this is something that he had a relationship with God. I mean, that's the bottom line. He had a relationship with God all the way through this, from a child. He had this relationship with God. And that's what I mean by the mystery, is that he was able to stay right with God through all of this and maintain a relationship with God. So he was able to separate his experience from his relationship with God. And so he wasn't, which is really where humility comes into play, so when bad things happened to him, he didn't blame God. And when good things didn't happen to him, he didn't sit there and thank God and talk about how wonderful God is, and so he wasn't back and forth between these two extremes, which is very common for most people. And so that's what I mean about he got the opportunity to become a Joseph. I think other people put in that same situation would probably do the kinds of things that you're talking about. Would probably give up, and choose wrong and do stupid stuff. But I think that's the thing is that his ability to maintain a relationship with God, personal, intimate relationship with God, even though he's going through all the things that he's going through.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, I know I was when I wrote this question down, where I want to type this question in, I was thinking about how, what was there, do you think that there was something different in the way Jacob raised Joseph or focused on Joseph?
No, absolutely not. That's a the question or the kind of comment question about of all of them having the opportunity. They did. We could say, you could look at the negative elements of it. You could say, well, Joseph was favored, being the youngest at the time. And so he had a coat of many colors, and he's a special thing like that. And you could talk about how, in a sense, he was a bad father. His father was a bad father because of those kinds of situations. Yeah, sorry, I stole your thunder on that question because I got in under the 15-second wire. but the idea of his father's influence, it's not necessary. It's not necessary to have a healthy father's influence in order to be right with God. That doesn't mean that you can't. It does play in. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It does play into it. But my dad was not a Christian, and when I became a Christian, his influence over my life as a non-Christian didn't play in at all. I immediately became a child of a new father. Mm-hmm. It was not the Bible does use the word adoption, but it's not adoption like a worldly adoption. It's like getting a new dad. I mean, it's a swap, a born again dad. Yeah. It's like I was born again to a new father. And that relationship, I think, was probably the most influential of everything in my life. Was that the depth of that relationship, because it's the only way I can describe. This is why nobody can talk me out of. I hear people. They it's funny because of the amount of pride that people have in trying to tell me what happened to me years ago when they don't even know me. You say, no. Yeah, I know you think that's what happened. Yes. And it's like, if I did that to you, you would probably punch me. If you told me about the good things you're doing and I said, no, the reason why you did that is, and I gave some reason that had, nothing to do with your character or who you are or anything, and I kept doing that over and over and over again, you'd finally get tired of that and say, you know what, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You're just an idiot. But people do this all the time, when it comes to salvation, try to second guess everything that's happened to you. But the truth of the matter is that I know, what happened to me. I know that I met Jesus. I know that I got saved. I know that, all the scriptures in the Bible that have influenced me are the Bible's the scriptures that I can only describe as the scriptures of the amazement of God. That while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And that whole idea of Jesus dying so that I could be saved had a tremendous impact on me. When I became a Christian, it was like I felt that I owed God everything. And I think that's, again, this indulgent, self kind of person doesn't like the idea of owing people stuff. But to me, it was like I had no choice. I owed this to God and to live for Him and to do whatever He wanted me to do. So if that meant becoming a pastor, well, that's what it meant. Which is what it did mean. I had designs on electrical engineering from a kid, and it was like, nope, that's not going to happen. God has another purpose for my life, and I'm going to pursue that. This doesn't matter. And there are other people who've had that kind of experience, and I'm not the only one. A lot of people that have had that experience. It's a great story to read about is these men that are referred to as the Cambridge Seven, that they did, I mean, literally in one sermon, had just committed their lives to the world, as missionaries, and said, I'll go. I will give up everything to go. And some of them buried 3 and 4 wives and children and all kinds of things. And he just said, well, you know what? I'm still doing the will of God. I'm not sick and dying, so there's no reason for me to leave. Mm-hmm. And they maybe go home on furlough, find another girl, get married, take her with again, and then do it all again, and bury them again, going to these places that are very disease ridden and things like that. And it's like, what makes somebody do something like that? Is it has to be the love of God. It has to be the love of God, the relationship that they have personally with God. That is the difference that makes the difference. So all these personality quirks, or sin nature, all those kinds of things, those are not the deciding factors in our lives. They don't have to be.
So do you think that, is there like a road that people can walk on to do the things that Joseph did? Or I should say experience the things that Joseph experienced? 'Cause, I mean, he's going through, if you just took the center shot of his story, you wouldn't think, wow, this is a really great relationship with God from that standpoint. It's like not really producing something that would be very attractive to somebody who's not a Christian.
Well, that's the thing. I think that's the thing, is that, it's quite clear that he had a great relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's quite clear. So to try to look at it on the surface and try to figure out how he had a great relationship with God is meaningless. There's really no point in doing that, because because now you're just looking at material things. You're not looking at something deeper. The peace that passes all understanding that Peter talks about. There's way more that is going on inside of Joseph and in his relationship with God that he can see, and he can tell. He can see the favor of God on his life. You can look at the circumstances of his life, but he can still see the favor of God that's on his life. He obviously, because of how he behaves, that he can still see that favor. The Bible, the history, recorded history over and over again says, but the Lord was with him. Yeah. And that isn't just a speculation. That's the reality. The Lord was with him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have survived such a test. But the Lord was with him, and he knew it. So as he's going through these things, he said, God's with me. Like the interpreting of dreams. He knows God's with him. He's not just interpreting dreams to interpret dreams. He knows this is something God is doing through him. And he's just being obedient. He's just doing, this, to me, this is I think this is the most important part of salvation. Beyond everything else is that having a personal, intimate relationship with God, that it doesn't matter what's going on around you. That doesn't matter, because that is not an influencer in your relationship with God. The only thing, and I can speak out of personal experience of times in my life where, and just recently, of praying and saying, God, I feel lost. I don't know what to do next, moving in a direction and things. And, as long as there's a direction to go in, something to do, then okay, I'm doing that. And then I get, I've done that, and it's like, okay, but it didn't produce what I was hoping it would produce. It didn't turn out to be, like last Saturday, talked to 2 guys very, very, very open, to the gospel. And I gave it everything I had and tried to bring them to salvation and couldn't. And just walking away from that day and thinking, God, this is so difficult. I've never been in a situation where it has been so difficult for me to be able to win people to Jesus. It's very, very difficult. But it doesn't make me want to, pull back on God. It doesn't make me want to, screw you. I don't want to have a relationship with you because you're not giving me souls. if anything, it does the opposite. Is okay, God, show me, teach me. What do I need to change in my life? What do I need to do so that I can be fruitful, so I can see people saved? I want your destiny for my life, and your destiny is for me to be fruitful, not for me to just be, just exist. And but that doesn't make the circumstances go away. It doesn't make life any easier. I still have to dig it out. I've still got to figure out what I need to do in order to be fruitful, and so that, I think, that element of relationship with God is so critical, because giving up's not even an option. Throwing in the towel is not even an option. Sinning is not even an option. It's not, those kinds of things are not an option. No. I have a great relationship with God. I'm just trying to figure out how to bring that into the material world that I live in. But spiritually, I'm doing wonderfully. I'm doing absolutely fabulous. But in the material world, bringing that into the material world, having influence on people, building a church, making disciples, those kinds of things, that's the difficulty. But spiritually, I'm doing great, and so there's no reason to trash that, because I'm not seeing what I want to see at a material level.
Yeah. So here you are, you're years later, and But when you first got saved, and we've gone through your testimony before, and you've talked about what kind of person your dad was, morally. You've talked about how you were morally before you got saved, being on drugs, and going from being somewhat of a good kid in high school and doing well. If I remember correctly, you did well in high school, grades and good grades and stuff like that. And then you started getting into the party scene, and then basically living for what felt good. The party felt good, the women felt good, and all that stuff. Just kind of
censoring.
So at what point did you start to see God as a father and not just as, this distant idea?
I never did. Yeah.
I mean, at what point in your conversion experience, at what point did you experience God as a father?
Well, I never, it was a revelation. It wasn't something that I sought out. It was something that God gave to me, from, there have been, I say this and then I realize it, and I think, it's hard to put things in context, but there were 2 times in my life before I became a Christian that I believed that God was speaking to me. Okay. At the time, I believed that God was speaking to me, not as a Christian, but at that time. And one was a very insane situation. I don't want to go into the details of it, but it was because it would take too long, but just insane. My life was on the line, and I kind of was one of those moments where you call out to God and ask God to help you. But unlike most stories I hear like that, it was God answered, and the answer was, "Why should I help you when you don't have anything to do with me?" And I thought, that's it, I'm screwed. God just called in my chips. It's like, I'm done. I'm probably going to die tonight. And I really was worried that was going to be it. And then the second time was when I went to church and got saved. And I really believed God was dealing with me to do that. But right after I got saved, almost right after I got saved, or during when I got saved, I was at the altar. And while I was at the altar praying, God began to speak to me like a son. That was the first time that God had ever spoken to me like a son. That first time was it was more of a rebuke. It was more like, you're just a selfish little pig, trying to get something out of me. The second time was, you need to do what I say because your life depends on it. But that time at the altar was like a son. It was, you want to know about this? You want to understand this? I'm going to explain it to you. Like a dad would explain. My dad, when I was younger, how he would explain things to me. It's exactly the experience. It was a thing of, well, this is this and this is that and this is how this works. And it was beyond my understanding, beyond my ability to actually understand. But hearing it, oh, I get it. I understand. It had to do with the issues of sin and sexual immorality and why these things are wrong. And it just very, very clear. But that's when the concept of God as my father became concrete, because I thought, he's wanting to teach me. He's wanting to show me stuff like a father to a son. And so then I started to read the Bible, which I had never done before. And that was when, over and over again, Jesus talks about the Father. And it's like, that's who he is. So that's, so that kind of put paper to my thinking. And that was it. It was like God is a father. He is a father to me. And that's why he's doing this. And that's why he's asking me questions and teaching me things, is because he wants me to learn and he wants me to be his son, and that's how my relationship has been ever since, is to be his son, which means as his son, I never allow myself. A son can disappoint a father. A son can do stupid things. A son can be disciplined. But a son to a real father can never be abandoned. And so I live with that. I live with that confidence that he will never leave me or forsake me. And I know he won't. No matter what I do, no matter how stupid I am, he will never leave me. He will never forsake me. He will always be there to help me and to help me to recover. He will always be there. That doesn't mean there won't be heavy, crazy consequences and nutty things that I have to deal with, but he will. He will help me. And so that gives me a confidence that even no matter where I'm at, no matter how many dumb things that I've done, that he's not going to just stonewall me. He's not going to, oh yeah, hey, you think you're going to come and talk to me about this? Because I got saved. I surrendered my life to Jesus and he made me his son. And that's salvation. Salvation is sonship. And so that's what motivates me. I believe that's what makes a Joseph, is that even though he had his father, he had a heavenly father as well. And that's what makes a Joseph a Joseph. That's what makes somebody be able to make right choices in life, is to understand my father. Like if you think about all the scriptures in the gospel where Jesus talks about the Father and what the Father is and the attributes of the Father, you realize that it's just like when you embrace that for yourself, you can become so comfortable in who you are, so comfortable in your own skin. That if I make a mistake trying to do right, I make a mistake trying to do right. I'm trying to do right. That's my motivation. That's my heart. I'm not trying to sneak around. I'm trying to be a good kid. I'm not trying to be a bad kid. See, because I'm an adult, I don't have to learn, what it means to be a good kid. I know what it means to be a good kid. So I don't have to go through that stage. I'm his son. Now I just need to be a good kid. And so that's my attitude, is that I want to be a good kid. I don't want to be a son who brings shame to his father. I don't want to cause people to go to hell for all eternity because I'm an idiot. I don't want that to be the case. And so that's what motivates me to do the things that I do.
So can you experience that outside of salvation?
Oh, no way. Yeah, no way. Because with what? With what? What entity is going to be your father? There's nothing outside of that. And I do know people that, their identity is locked into their dad, even when their dad's dead. There was a guy, I can't remember the name of the guy, does this tremendous climb, and then gets to the top and says, "Are you happy now, Dad?" And his dad's been dead for years. He's just trying to get the favor of his dad, to have some sort of, contentment in his soul, but he'll never see it. It's because it's not going to happen.
Very good. That's all my questions, and I think that's a great place to stop. But for next week, we will not have a podcast. We'll put information on our YouTube channel to our conference, which will be live streamed, and you can join the links there. That will be every night next week. There's also seminars in the morning. I know folks who are not going are probably working, but if you have a chance to catch these, guaranteed they will help you. So, like I said, with more information on that, but next week, just a reminder, we will not have a podcast live. So we will continue on the week after, and we'll have something a little bit different that following week. But look forward to seeing you guys soon.